We live in an age where comparison is constant. We wake up and we're already seeing other people's lives, their successes, perfect bodies, achievements, travels, relationships. And without realizing it, we start measuring ourselves against these distorted mirrors. Am I achieving enough? Why don't I have what others do? What did I do wrong? Confucius lived in a different era, but the problem was the same. The desire to be like others, to seek external validation, to feel worthy only if certain expectations are met. And he stated it clearly. The noble man seeks to perfect himself. The petty man seeks to compare himself with others. Now more than ever, we must remember this truth. Your worth is not measured by comparison, but by authenticity. This video is an invitation to stop looking sideways and start looking within, to discover that you're not here to compete, but to grow, and that your path, though different, is deeply valuable. Confucius taught that every person is like a different seed. Some bloom early, others take more time, but each one holds unique value. The problem arises when we expect all to grow at the same pace, in the same soil, with the same appearance. That illusion destroys self-esteem. He said, "Do not be concerned if others do not recognize you. Be concerned if you do not recognize yourself." That phrase holds profound wisdom. You don't need others' approval to validate who you are. What you need is to know yourself, respect yourself, and move forward from your truth. The wise do not despair over others' achievements. They observe, they learn, but they do not stray from their own path. Because comparing yourself to others is like using someone else's compass for your own journey. Only when you honor your process, your story, and your pace can you walk with confidence. Constant comparison is like a drop of water falling on a stone. Little by little, it wears it down. It doesn't happen all at once, but persistently. And without realizing it, we begin to doubt our own worth. Today, more than ever, we live in a culture that feeds this comparison. Social media, for instance, doesn't show us people's real lives. It shows a carefully edited, polished, filtered version. We only see success, joy, achievements, never the pain, the doubts, or the failures. Confucius, though unfamiliar with Instagram or TikTok, understood this problem well. The human tendency to look outward to define ourselves. But what we ignore is that by looking at someone's life without seeing their full path, we fall into illusion. We are comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, and in that game, we always lose. This comparison seeps into everything: how we see ourselves in the mirror, how we measure our progress, how we interpret our relationships. We feel we are not enough, not as smart, not as successful, not as attractive as others. And that sense of inadequacy erodes our self-esteem, making us believe we're broken, that we're behind, that we're not worthy. Confucius offered another path: competing with oneself. He said, if upon waking you are better than yesterday, you are on the right path. It's not about being better than others. It's about being more authentic, wiser, more whole than you were yesterday. That is the only valid comparison. When we stop looking sideways and begin looking inward, we discover something liberating. We don't have to be like anyone else. It's enough to be fully who we are, with everything that entails. True self-esteem doesn't come from applause, but from the alignment between who we are and how we live. And that depends on no one else. For Confucius, the most important knowledge was not that of books, laws, or even the arts. The highest form of knowledge was self-knowledge, because only when you know yourself can you live truthfully, and only when you live truthfully can you live in peace. He said, "He who does not examine himself is destined to lose his way," not to get lost in the world, but to lose his own path. Many times we project outward, trying to be what others expect, chasing ideals that aren't ours. But the wise turn inward. They don't need masks or appearances. They know who they are and build their lives from there. This self-knowledge is not selfishness, it's clarity. Knowing what drives you, what affects you, what strengthens you. Knowing your virtues, but also your limits. Because when you understand who you are, you stop measuring yourself by others' standards. You no longer need to impress, compete, or defend. You simply take your place. Confucius taught that the wise path is not about appearing straight on the outside, but being consistent on the inside. It's not about seeming virtuous, but being virtuous. And that being can only grow from a deep relationship with yourself. That's why the first step to stop comparing yourself is to start listening, to not what others say, but to what your own conscience whispers when everything is silent. Talking about self-esteem often sounds abstract or distant, but strengthening it is a very concrete process, built through small, repeated actions each day. Confucius didn't believe in magical fixes. He believed in the discipline of the soul. First, care for your inner dialogue. The way you talk to yourself shapes how you feel about yourself. If your inner voice is full of judgment, comparisons, and pressure, your self-esteem will suffer. The wise cultivate respectful inner language. It's not about empty affirmations, but about recognizing your effort, your growth, your intentions. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you love. Second, set goals that depend on you. We often fall into the trap of measuring our worth by others' standards, gaining followers, earning more, reaching someone else's level. But those things aren't always in your control. What you can control is your own commitment, reading 10 minutes a day, practicing patience, improving in something specific. That's where self-esteem grows, by keeping your promises to yourself. Third, celebrate your differences. What makes you different is what makes you valuable. You're not here to copy models, but to bring your unique voice. Confucius said, "Harmony does not mean uniformity, but mutual respect for diversity." Accepting your pace, your passions, your story is a powerful affirmation. And affirming yourself isn't arrogance, it's dignity. And fourth, surround yourself with environments that don't fuel comparison. If what you consume makes you feel inadequate, reconsider it. If certain relationships push you into constant competition, reflect on them. It's not about isolating yourself, but about protecting your peace. Self-esteem needs spaces where you can simply be, without fear of judgment or endless comparison. The path of the wise is not built on grand gestures, but on consistent practices. Little by little, step by step, you become someone who doesn't need to seem, because you've already learned to be. Confucius saw life not as a race, but as a process of inner refinement. Every human being is called to transform, not through comparison, but through the constant cultivation of their own virtue. For him, there is no single right path. There are as many paths as there are people, and each one must find their own. The wise are not obsessed with arriving first, but with advancing meaningfully. They don't compare themselves with others or get trapped in the idea of being behind or going too slow. They understand that growth is not linear and that every experience has its own time and value. The tree that grows slowly bears the strongest fruit, we might say, inspired by his vision. In the individual's journey, according to Confucius, there are 3 key stages. First, the discovery of oneself, then the acceptance of who one is, and finally, the authentic expression of that self. Many people remain stuck in discovery or get trapped in denial. But the wise move forward to live in alignment with what they've understood about themselves. This path is not easy. It means letting go of external expectations, breaking molds, and sometimes feeling alone in a society that values appearance over truth. But according to Confucius, those who remain faithful to themselves, even in discomfort, are closer to harmony than those who simply conform. Ultimately, the individual's journey is not about reaching an external goal, but about fully inhabiting who you are, with humility, with perseverance, with dignity. Because in that quiet self-recognition, true peace begins to bloom. You are not what others achieve. You are not what others expect. You are what you choose to build with your truth. And that truth needs no comparison, only to be heard. Confucius understood something the modern world forgets, that there is no single model of success, no one right path, that each human being blooms in their own way, in their own time, with their own light. And when we stop looking sideways, we begin to see clearly who we truly are. Comparison is a silent trap. It makes us live as if we're always behind, always owing something, as if our worth depended on fulfilling some invisible checklist written by others. But self-esteem doesn't come from that debt. It comes from recognition of what you've walked through, what you've overcome, what you keep striving for despite it all. The wise do not inflate themselves or shrink. They know themselves. They don't need to outshine anyone because they've already learned to shine from within. In that inner light, there is no competition, only coherence, only peace. If every time you felt not enough, you paused and asked yourself, enough for whom? By what expectation? According to whose standard am I measuring my worth? Then, little by little, you would begin to break the chain of comparison, and in its place, you would build respect for your process, for your path, for your story. Confucius would not ask you to be better than anyone. He would ask you to be faithful to yourself, not to be distracted by other people's journeys. Because in the end, what will make all of this worthwhile is not how much you achieved, but how much of yourself you managed to honor. And that, living in peace with yourself, is the highest form of wisdom, and also the deepest form of love.